And we are on today's podcast. We've got Louis Sotelo, not Solito,
Not
Sotelo.
Salido.
Um, and this is a dope podcast for me, mainly because we've been able to train together climbing wise. And then I obviously have been pulled away and I'm training at Purdue, and you're back in California. But I think one big piece for this was the training environment that we were in. Not necessarily like we were training together all the time, but more so because the vibes that you brought while you were training, I felt like just amped everyone up in the climbing gym to where it was just like people wanted to get after it. But with that being said, give us a little touch of what you're doing, your background, and then we'll kind of flow from there.
So I've been training for almost a decade at this point. Started with bodybuilding and a couple years down the road transitioned into powerlifting just because I happen to have a gift for picking up heavy weight from the floor.
Yeah.
And couple years down the road, I picked up climbing, and I just been doing mainly powerlifting and climbing ever since. Kind of got lucky with finding climbing because it's a crazy amount of fun, and it takes the monotonous nature of just doing the same three movements for the most part, and giving me a little bit of extra fun on the side.
Yeah, so you've been climbing for how long now?
I think I just hit a little over 4 years now.
No way. All right, wow,
Yeah,
that's
I
that's
didn't I didn't even
inspiring
think it
for
was that
us
long either,
newbies.
dude. I'm like, COVID took so much time, dude. Like, it was it was like no gym for almost a solid year, and I was just, there's like I don't think I've taken you, but there's a small beach in Corona del Mar,
Mm,
that has some like semblance of climbing. So it's like
yeah.
it's fun for COVID times because there was nothing open, and that's like the closest spot you can get some type of climbing in. But then
Mm,
you start going outdoors for real, and you're just like, this spot is trash, but it
yeah.
worked for the time being.
Yeah. So I think the cool part here, and I think my if I'm labeling these podcasts, this one, my main thought, and this line kept hitting me, the body follows the mind. That was the big piece for this podcast. The body follows the mind. It kept hitting me. The body follows the mind. Maybe one thing people might not know if they don't know you is kind of the condition that you've kind of dealt with. And I think, again, playing into that, I think it even heightens the training environment when you go so hard. And so I
Yeah,
think that's the part that's like super inspiring for people. It's like, dude, the body is following his mind. Like, you just get after it and your body adapts to do what you need to do. And so
yeah.
with that being
So
said,
for
what is the condition that you're dealing with and that you have to kind
yeah,
of push through?
for for the people that don't know, I have I was born with scoliosis, so it's severe curvature of the spine. It's like angled in a couple different areas, so like my neck is, turned to the right consistently, or tilted to the right consistently, and I have uh chest area. There's like another curvature, and then a little bit lower in the spine. So I just been, to me, I feel normal. To everybody else, everybody comes up to me and just like, dude, you're an inspiration, and I'm just like. I was telling you, I'm like just like I don't know how to respond to that. Like I really appreciate when I get those comments. Like it hits the heart, but I'm just like, dude, I'm just me. But yeah,
Yeah.
as far as the body follows the mind, man, I've been I for powerlifting, I don't know how I do it. I just am able to deadlift a stupid amount of weight for the size that I am. So um I have a couple world records for the deadlift, and the last competition I did was 507-pound deadlift, and I weighed in at like 111 pounds. So that's like almost 5 times my body weight. But ever since then, I've surpassed that by another, 80, 90 pounds. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just a crazy thing. And I actually kind of wanted to ask you, like, I don't train how most people train, I don't think, because I've been calming it down a little bit, but since I started doing what I'm doing, I just been kind of going hard nonstop for couple years at this point, and I recently started calming down a little bit just because I started doing jujitsu not too long ago too, And so it's just breaking apart all the training cycles. Like I used to just do, you know, get my powerlifting in the as soon as I got to the gym, and then climb for another hour and a half, 2 hours after that. And I'm just like, I beat my body to hell. But I mean, I'm still young. I can recover decently. But I mean, I was still putting up crazy numbers. This is when I was, adding a decent amount to my deadlift still consistently. Like I was breaking new PRs every month or two, and I was just like, I don't know how I'm doing it. I'm taking it somewhat slow, but I still am, training hard as hell and still breaking new PRs. And I just like, I know most people get it in their head that, or most people advise that you should take rest days and stuff, but I honestly barely take rest days. Like my rest days are mobility training days, or I would do a bunch of the stuff that you showed me, a couple of the knees over toes programs and stuff. I would, you know, do one thing instead of both. Like instead of, you know, lifting and climbing, I would just climb or I would just lift, light. But no rest days for me, and I just been progressing pretty well up until that point, or up until now, pretty much.
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to that, like two beautiful pieces. One, it's we're as good as we're as good as what we can recover from. And so if you find that you're recovering from a lot of these lifts, maybe it's the perfect volume for you, and you've been able to just consistently adapt to it and
Okay.
proceed to get better. The other piece is there's a lot of people that just don't push themselves hard enough. And so it's if you're like climbing such an interesting sport because the majority of people do not have a coach. So you're
Yeah,
just going into these sessions essentially doing whatever you want all
pretty
the
much.
time. And if that, yeah, if you did that in most other sports, like you're dead or you're just not progressing.
Yeah.
And so I think the big piece there is what you've noticed is, oh, I know how to push myself consistently. So over 4 years, I mean, you're climbing V grades of anywhere from like what, 8 to 10,
I'd say 7 to 9. 7 to 9.
7 to 9, playing with tens,
Yeah.
which I've seen you. Like, I guess
Playing
in
with
my
10.
mind, yeah, it's, you've been able to consistently push yourself because
Yeah.
inside and outside of the climbing gym, you know how you can recover the best. And so
Hmm.
whatever you have been doing works consistently. And so I think that's a beauty of what you're doing is again, the body follows the mind. You push really hard, but whatever you've done outside of the gym when you go home is working because you're recovering and then you keep progressing. And
Cool.
so you've kind of got the key there. Like we all everyone's so different that it's hard to just lay this one blueprint of do this and you'll skyrocket. You clearly have your own blueprint that works super well.
Yeah. But it's weird because I just started about a year ago. Like I think I'm almost a year into journaling everything that I do when I'm lifting wise. And I haven't changed much in, you know, over a year and a half. Like I've been for the powerlifting, I've been doing this similar things consistently, just heavier weight. I've just been, progressive overload, progressive overload. That's king in my mind at least. And then, but I've been looking at, other books, and you've opened my mind to a bunch of other techniques too to, you know, do different training sessions, like, strengthen certain parts of the body or certain, you know, antagonists or whatever, and be able to maybe push a little bit further than what I've been doing. Because I've been, for the squat, for the bench, I don't, I can't do as much as I deadlift anywhere near, but I still kind of, push it decently. Like it's not progressing as much as the deadlift, which is, in my mind kind of sucks, but it's fine. Um, but like now that I'm thinking of it a little bit different, I can start working, other movements to try to get my just overall body stronger in general, not just in those positions.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're looking at this is something that I learned from Matt Winning and then just being um, within and learning from that strength and conditioning field is, you know, again, if you want to progress and at some point you notice you're stagnating, you've got to look at your limiting factors. And so if like your low back is holding you back from being able to actually like deadlift, maybe not so much your quads or hamstrings, but like more so your low back, then you need to, pour in a lot more time. So maybe like your warm up or some accessory movements are more built out to build up that little piece that's kind of holding you back. And so just starting to look at your training in a little bit different ways. Well, like I do need to make my hamstrings stronger so I can like push more, right? Like that's the
Yeah,
whole thing. That's the main mover, right, of the deadlift. But there's all these other pieces that are playing into that play such a big role that we could just be completely letting go. Not to say that it's not working your low back anyways. That's
yeah,
quite aggressive on the low back, but maybe finding different ways to stimulate those muscles to make them stronger.
yeah,
But if I'm going to jump into this field really quickly, just because I don't want to like lose this train of thought, but
yeah,
so you do all these different things, right? You've been climbing for 4 years. You do, Olympic lifting, powerlifting. You have so many different things. Do you feel like they all play into one another super well, or do you feel like sometimes they pull away from each other? Because you've progressed so fast within 4 years for climbing, it's like maybe there's something to that more climbers could maybe um, like dive into. Well, maybe I do need to look into Olympic lifting, or maybe I do need to make sure that I'm lifting, period, on the side because I mean, you have a lot of like climbing purists in my mind, just based off
yeah,
of my very minimal knowledge in climbing, that they're like, just climb,
yeah.
don't do this, just climb. What
I,
are your
I
thoughts
would
on
say
that?
80. I would say 80% of the people from the gym that we would go to just climb. I
Mm.
there's a very few people that I see lifting somewhat consistently, compared to a couple of us that trinkle in there and just kill it in the gym and in the walls. But it's a good question. I w A lot of people ask if powerlifting is good for climbing, and I'm gonna say probably not. There's certain things that you should strengthen for climbing wise. Like I would say legs help a lot because or certain positions. So like I started front squatting heavy, and once I started front squatting heavy, I noticed my core was a lot stronger because I'd have to hold a weight, in a different position that I'm used to. And that would translate to the wall in, certain positions when I have to hold tension, my, chain would be on point for certain
Yeah,
climbs. And I would notice that I'd be like, dude, I wouldn't be able to do this. Like, a year, yeah, obviously, yeah, I would get stronger, but I wouldn't be able to hold this tension if my core wasn't this tight. And I'm attribute that to all the front squatting that I do because um once I started Olympic lifting about a little over a year ago, and I wanted to get good at clean and jerks and overhead movements, and the kinetic chain just needs to be strong as hell, and that's a lot of that has to do with my core at least. So I would say for climbing wise, core is almost king, but I don't know if it translates too well from like Olympic lifting, from powerlifting to to climbing wise, because I mean it's a lot of leg strength, but in again like the chest you don't really need for climbing too often. Uh, I would say it's like a lot of shoulders, back, and core strength that you need for climbing, and some decent amount of leg strength.
yeah. I think it's interesting too, though, because you look over your 4 or so years, and how many times have you been injured, though?
Honestly, hardly ever. Like I've gotten my longest injury is more of a climbing injury, and it's just like a finger issue that I've been dealing with for the last like 6 to 8 months. It doesn't stop me from climbing. It's just a nagging injury, but I don't use a lifting belt. I haven't used one in I would say 3 to 4 years at this point. I remember starting with one, and I always thought it was like a crutch because there's most people don't even know how to use a lifting belt properly. Like you have to force against the lifting belt to create pressure to make your core tight. Most people don't do that. Most people just I'll tighten this as hard as I can, and hopefully that works. You know, but ever since I stopped using it, it forced me to focus on my core strength, on how I'm pulling, how I'm pushing from the legs, and it made me get the technique really solid, especially for my back. Like I don't want to get injured because I don't know how long it's gonna take me to recover from, a bad herniated disc injury or, if it's gonna make my scoliosis worse or something. But Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, well, I guess my point that I was like almost trying to lead you to was outside of like the little climbing injuries that kind of make sense, the fingers, like your body is so strong and ready for any scenario. Because like another climbing injury that I've noticed since I've been in the world of climbing, let's call it a year and a half now, maybe 2 years, is hamstrings. You get a lot of like hamstring problems. Uh, you're pushing a shit ton of weight for a deadlift. It's like I don't see your hamstrings being that vulnerable. So like when you do heel hooks or you're doing a lot of these movements that most people are kind of fumbling at, you're ready to go. And so I guess that's the piece that I love about it is I do think most climbers are missing lifting for just longevity sense.
You're not
And
wrong.
that's the piece where I'm like, dude, you're like this rising star in our gym, and it's perfect because they get to see in my mind, yeah, okay, he does a lot of movements, but cross training's phenomenal for being very good at one thing too. So, by you lifting and people seeing that, you're like, damn, dude, this guy's strong as hell. He's dynamic as hell. I'd push that towards the Olympic lifting, right? That rate of
Yeah,
force development. Boom, how fast can you
yeah,
move weight? And
explosive.
so you're stable as shit. So yeah, let's go. Like I'm surprised you're not injured, you know?
It's a good observation because honestly, I haven't even thought about how not. I mean, I've been fortunate not to be injured, but you know, surprisingly, I haven't, especially with the Olympic lifting, just because that took me 4 months to even touch any weight. I don't know if I told you, I was working the PVC pipe for months at a time, just to try to get the movement down. And even then, I probably should have added a little bit of weight just because PVC pipe's not gonna get you in those strong positions. Like you can just throw that thing around. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
gonna teach you the proper positions like eventually, but you need some weight to know what it's gonna feel like when you have weight over your head like that, you know? And but with those injury, or I mean, with those like Olympic lifts, my shoulders have been fine for some reason. The only problem, I mean, the only problem I seem to have is the wrist issue, and that's probably just from the flexibility of holding the bar in certain positions. Like it's mainly in the snatch as well. Like you have to hold it in a weird angle, and
Yep.
that just my wrist doesn't like that, so I just wear the strap and it's fine. I do a little bit of rice bucketing here and there. I probably should do a little bit more, but honestly, I my knees are fine. It's a lot of work on your knees, especially with all the squatting I do. I work. I mean, I do legs like 3 to 4 times a week, so I squat a lot. I overhead, uh, like with the overhead bar. Um, I just squat a lot, and the deadlifts here and there as well. But yeah, man, surprised. I didn't even think of the non amount of non injuries that I have, and I'm kind of stoked. Thanks for pointing that
Yeah,
out.
yeah, to me, it's just when I watch it from afar as a third party, I'm like, there's a method to the madness. And like, maybe you weren't even fully recognizing it because you're like, maybe it just made sense to you. Yeah, like I want to be strong, period.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it's the Mark Bell quote, like, strength is never a weakness, weakness is never strength. Like, the stronger you are, the more stable you are, the less likely you are to get hurt, period. And so it's like when you go and try a new sport, let's say jujitsu, like you're getting cranked into positions. Like you're like everything. You're just trying to get pulled apart by people. And so if you're
Yeah,
stronger, your shoulders maybe are more stable and strong within certain overhead positions. And so if someone's trying to fucking crank on your arm and ruin your life, it's like you
yeah.
might be more safe within those positions. And so, I always thought watching all of your lifts and your workouts, I'm like, this guy's a monster.
Appreciate it, bud. Yeah,
Yeah. But
I can I can see how in jiu-jitsu might be a little bit different. I mean, you can strengthen to a certain amount, but it's like the joints and ligaments in jiu-jitsu that are a little bit different, and that's a little harder to, make sure it's strong because, there's techniques to just take that out of you, just my coach, my black belt, he was just telling me we should take your time learning any leg attacks because you move the wrong way. Let's say someone's holding you in a leg lock and you move the wrong way. You can pop out your own knee and it'll be like a split second. It doesn't really matter how strong you are. It's just like your knee doesn't move that way and you moved it that way. So it's like, you know, you're screwed for a bit, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But for Olympic lifting, for climbing, yeah, I can definitely see how, you know, strengthen everything and you will minimize the amount of injuries you will have ever.
Yeah. Yeah. So just really quickly walk me back onto that piece with climbing, then playing off of that, similar to jujitsu. Do you find that technique is kind of king? And by really grinding into like a lot of these pieces that maybe not everyone's obsessed with, which is like maybe learning to climb slab, or like really making sure that your technique in the cave is really important, or just like really honed into, what kind of progressed you technically in climbing?
Um, what do you mean by what do you mean by that? Like, how do I
So,
progress?
like based off of kind of that assumption, if technique is king in a lot of these sports like Olympic lifting or jujitsu and climbing, what have you done personally to make sure that like your technique? Because I see you climb cave all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, how are you so technically locked in?
So, okay, that's a good question. For jiu-jitsu, I can't really speak on it too much because I just started. Like, I have, 2 months under my belt. That's nowhere
Okay.
near enough time. My coach explains it very well, though. Like, you have to know the technique because you can't. He explains it as if you try to muscle your way out of a certain move, a certain position, you're doing it wrong because there's a way to do it with technique and it'll just be smooth. You'll use like a fraction of the strength that you need and you'll just flow a lot better. For climbing wise though, it's the tech there's certain things you could do. Like I would say people like to work on the kilter board. I don't think that's great for a beginner just because that's more of a strength builder type deal. It's more of a tension building technique or tension building exercise. I would say for climbing, it would be like up and down climbing your
Mhm.
like up to what is easy for you. So for me, I can up and down climb up to like 3 or 4 fairly easily, like no struggle. But I work on the footwork, like I drop me every move that I can just to, move the body in certain positions that I know I'm gonna have to use in much harder climbs. So I love working the drop knees just because it makes me feel cool. And the, just making sure my knees are working fine. Like if you can drop knee, your your flexibility, your knee strength is pretty gonna be pretty solid for the most part. Um, so up and down climbing is one of my favorite, or up and down climbing easy stuff is one of my favorite technique building exercises. But I mean, you can do, uh, I it's hard to say for the cave because the cave is mainly a strength type thing. Up until a certain point, it's like if you're still very beginner, you're gonna feel mainly of it's a core strength and holding yourself up for a while. It's more of sorry, it's core strength and stamina because it's just so overhung and you have to hold yourself in much heavier position than you
Yeah,
would
like
in a slab.
your deficit is strength, because like the
Yeah,
stronger you get just almost by doing it will make everything easy enough to where you can almost
yeah,
start to actually focus on the technique. That makes sense.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I love the cave personally. It's my favorite spot. I would say it's probably because my core is decently strong.
Yeah.
I hate slab, but I know I have to work on it, and I would say it's a more of a technique building exercise because, that's a lot of footwork. It's a lot of footwork, and if you could just like maneuver your feet in certain ways, like I forgot what it's called, but it's like kind of back flagging where you have your leg or your foot on a foot chip or something. You move your other leg behind your the foot chip and just kind of stabilize yourself. It's hard to explain unless I show it.
Sure.
But the I would say technique building in climbing. a lot of slab, I would say, and up and down climbing is king for me at least. Like if I'm bringing someone in, I would tell them up and down climb everything, and you can see them flow a lot faster than if they were just climbing, a bunch of easy stuff and then dropping down from the top. It's like kind of controlling the eccentric movements. Some
Yeah.
people just deadlift up and drop the bar from the full concentric and literally just drop it on the floor, and that's like missing an entire portion of the workout practically. You would not pass that lift if it was in a competition. So it's I didn't even think about that, but it is kind of working the eccentric portion of
Yeah.
the climbing.
Yeah, it's kind of I've never like I would do the down climbing almost as just a warm up, but I never really thought about it in the aspect of utilizing it as, yo, let's make a almost a day or at least really take a big portion of our climbing session and focus on the down climbing to make sure that, your body tension's right, that you're really focused, like really focusing on your
Hmm.
feet. And it's like movement economy, right? It's just like how well can you move without being absolutely gassed out because
Yeah,
that's a piece of, big piece of climbing is can you like not just climb hard but climb smart. It's not
yeah,
all like necessarily about just like hammering through climbing. It's actually like flowing through. Like I feel like the best climbers, you're not seeing them cut feet too often, and it's when they do, it's very controlled and on purpose. Um, so
yeah.
okay, then go
Sorry,
ahead.
a bunch of coaches look down upon cutting feet. I mean,
Mm,
uh, sometimes it's like that's the only way to hold it. Like there's certain climbs that, there's some very famous climbs all around the world where it's the move. But if you have the ability to keep your feet on the wall, it's looked better upon just because um it shows that you can control yourself, and that is a big portion of it. If you're just dynamically moving through everything, yeah, you're strong in that position, but then there's going to be certain spots where you're probably going to be weak.
yeah, that makes plenty of sense. Um, and just running with that too is you see most people. I mean, kind of like earlier what I stated, but like most, like almost no one. Oh, I'd say like what 98% of climbers don't have a coach.
No,
Do
I
you
would
think
say
that's
not. I
a
mean,
yeah?
say
Would you
again.
say that's a detriment, or is that almost there's more freedom to kind of write your own program and kind of flow with how you want it?
That also just depends on the person. If someone's pursuing something, pretty gnarly, like if they have a goal in mind, yeah, definitely get a coach. But, most people are just there to have fun. So that's also cool with me. I've never had a climbing coach, to be honest. I just kind of, that's a good, I've just climbed so often with good outside climbers, people that go outdoors and do 1,000-foot stuff or 1,000-foot things. I like to climb with them. They teach me the ways, and I just kind of go from there. In, I get stronger, but I take whatever they teach me, and I'm not gonna say that's a detriment by any point. But I'm gonna say most people in the gym are just there to have fun. So it all just depends on the person. Like, yeah, if you want to coach, you're probably gonna progress 10 times faster than most of the people in the gym. But if you don't, I mean, totally up to you.
Yeah, it's
Same thing
like
with same thing with lifting. Like if you
yeah.
want to coach, you're probably gonna progress. I mean, if you get a coach, he should know what he's doing, or they should know what they're doing, and you're probably gonna, use methods to get you where you want to get to a lot faster, or you can just lift because it's a stress relief for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the training partners to me is just so important. And I kind of noticed that within my climbing, and I get lucky to climb with you guys and a lot of that big group at the movement gym. But I feel like training partners, at least within climbing, because most people don't have a coach, just like speeds up your like the intelligence. It's the
Hmm.
intelligence part because I feel like when I first started climbing, it's just like it's stupid. Like, oh, let me just be muscle through this whole thing,
Yeah.
and then you actually have a training partner that might not be as strong as you, so they're forced to be more technical. And so
Hmm.
like the both of you could kind of like intertwine strength and technique, and then you start climbing with people that are more advanced like you, and you're like, oh well, now I'm seeing both merged perfectly. And it's just like you just like by watching someone climb that like eloquently, you're like, damn dude, like okay, it just it pushes you to a whole nother level by having those. I would call them like soft mentors, or just like, because
Yeah,
a climbing partner's one thing, but when you're so ahead
yeah,
that like everything that you're doing is like, I'm just like eating up all of the knowledge.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
that's a mentor right there. I'm
yeah.
learning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I could see it like when you came back a couple months back and like it was your first day at the gym, like you were struggling on what you were flashing before. And but I
Yeah.
mean, within a week, you were no, I'm gonna say back to where you were, but you can see
Yeah.
yourself, it clicking a little bit better and you just flow a lot better and we were climbing together that entire week. But yeah, definitely, man. I always it's somewhat annoying that people hate talking to people that are better than them. And I'm just
Mm.
like, dude, put me around these people, man. Like I want to
Yeah.
know what they know, you know? Like I started hanging out with the comp kids a little bit more just because they're a
Mm.
lot better than I am. Like he's teaching me movements that I wouldn't have even thought about. I was trying to muscle my way through a bunch of stuff yesterday, and I was asking the comp kid. He's like, "Oh," and I made that move a lot easier just because of the
Mm.
beta that they were giving me. But people are just kind of scared, or I don't know. It's just it's weird that they hate asking for advice because I'm not gonna like the gym is a community, man. The gym is like a
Yeah.
family for the most part. A lot of people love giving advice. Some people hate the spray where you just tell them what they should
Yeah.
do, but if they come and ask you, you know, people are more than willing to give you advice. And it's funny.
Yeah.
There's a little kid that just started going there. He's probably like 7, and he's just making all the friends. Like people love him just because he's like, he's so upbeat and he's asking all these people questions, and he's actually listening to them too, which is kind of cool to, see him try a couple of things, and then a couple people come up to him and tell him what he should do, and he actually does it, and it's just like, damn, this kid's gonna be a tank when he's, our age or something. If he keeps pursuing it, he's gonna be an absolute unit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really it's cool. I think that's one of my favorite parts about the climbing community is you can be as connected or as disconnected as you want, and then your journey's just kind of set from there. And
Hmm.
I've made a lot of good friends from that gym, but you also see some of the people that just throw in the headphones and just zone out because maybe they need to like escape. But
Yeah.
it's just such a cool environment that I've never really been in to
Hmm.
to see that. And it is funny to see people starting. For me, I like getting absolutely humbled all the time. And so coming into the gym was exciting for me because I don't know anything. I know
Hmm.
nothing. And so, meeting you guys and meeting these more intelligent and experienced climbers was like the coolest thing, to just learn so much about a completely different movement from what I'm used to. And it's just it's a fantastic sport and a community.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, getting
yeah.
humbled is an awesome experience too, just because like jiu-jitsu is one thing where I'm just like, getting completely tossed around by this dude that's been doing it for 12 years and he's just like literally letting me do whatever I want. And he just in a split second just does whatever he wants. And it's just crazy. Also, went to a gymnastics gym and that was humbling too. It was like an open gym at night and there was just
Yeah.
some absolute tanks. Like this dude that was I don't know. To me, he should have been in Olympics because he was just facing a wall, jumping a little bit, like a little hop, like less than 6 inches, pushing against the wall and doing a full backflip. Like, I'm like,
Mm.
what is going on? And this guy was built like an upside down Christmas tree. He's just like he's a tank. And then there's people just doing, 9 types of flips in the middle of the gym. And I'm just like, I don't belong here, but this is cool as hell. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love
So
getting humbled. I love those experiences because I'm used to going to the gym and be like, all right, I know what I'm doing. And then going to a new spot and just like, I am nowhere near comfortable right now, but this is kind of sick.
yeah. Yeah. It's definitely it's fantastic to like taste all of these different sports and to see all these different movements. And it's just like learning how to understand how to move your body in a bunch of different ways is just
Yeah,
the most interesting. It's the most interesting experience for me because it plays into everything that like you're trying to hone into, like by getting better at climbing and learning, all these different types of tension movements, it's translated over to my diving to where I feel like once I get into certain uh whole like really like isometric positions, once I get out of a flip, I feel like I have this extra strength that I never used to because let's say climbing in the cave, every time you move a arm, you're like driving as hard as you can into that opposite foot to make sure you're
yeah,
not just barn dooring off the wall. It's fantastic. I
yeah.
love it.
Actually, going back to like climbing with or having training partners, I honestly haven't had a training partner in lifting in years. Like that's how I started. I went every day just because I knew, or when I started lifting like 9 years ago, I went every day just because I knew I had like my best friends were gonna be there and we were just gonna meet at the gym and just tear it up for a while. And I missed that. But, they dropped off and I met new people so far, but like nobody does, or at least in my gym, nobody does what I do. There's like very few people that, deadlift often that, do Olympic lifting in general. Like I'll catch one or two here and there and I've already, talked to them, we're cool and everything, but we're just there at different times. I haven't had a solid training partner in lifting in a while at this point. So I mean, do you guys how's your training partners?
Yeah, I mean, I get lucky because I'm in a very like condensed
Right,
spot to where you come to Purdue to dive and to be as high performance as you can be within this sport. And so, all my training partners are, trying to get after it as much as I can. And so I get lucky in that sense. But
right.
it does get harder once you're pulled out of that super intense, hey, we're all hyper specified within this one sport. And then you get into, like let's say we go to the climbing gym and there's climbers, there's, handstand practitioners in the corner, and then you've got,
The
40
hacky sack
different
people.
things that are, yeah, it's just like flowing between a million different things, which I like because at some point when you get so hyper fixated on one type of movement, you kind of like there's a beauty to being super skilled at that movement, but then you almost lose a piece of the beauty of all movement. And so
Yeah,
that's why it was so refreshing to learn climbing because I'm moving in a completely different way instead of just this frontal plane at all times. I'm actually twisting into certain movements and using my body in a completely different way that I'm not used to. And so it's great to have, this really specified training, but after more well over a decade of doing it, you're like, all right, well, my time is coming. I'm excited to start,
yeah,
trying and doing different things. And it's very inspiring to see people that just like grind really
yeah,
hard at a lot of different things because I think that's what life is about is, I don't want to be like specificity is for bugs. That's not us. So it's like do a
yeah.
lot of different things and be good at it. Why not?
That's a beautiful way to put it. You're hyper specified in a certain thing that you just kind of lack movement in everything else. That's I
Yeah.
haven't heard anybody put it that way. But I mean, that's probably why I'm so in love with climbing and just starting other movements too, just because you know, I'm mainly a power lifter, but the movement and climbing has just gripped me and I'm so much stronger in all around now because of it that, it keeps me focused and keeps me, engaged all the time.
Yeah. So if you had an intro climber coming up to you and was like, Luis, I need just keep it simple for me. Give me three main things to help me just progress at this sport. What's the big three for you?
Oof, it's a good one. I'm gonna say the up and down climb, whatever they can, like, you know, it could be zeros, it could be ones, whatever they can. That's gonna be a major one. Just because I think reps or mileage on the wall counts a lot.
Mm.
And if you can do one climb but count it as two practically, it's gonna get you farther a lot faster than what most people do. Um, Core strength. Definitely work on your core strength because, or honestly, that might just be a me thing, just because I love the cave and you need that for the cave. So that might just be, me putting myself in, dropping a couple nuggets of myself in there.
Yeah.
Uh, that and the finger strength is gonna come. So I wouldn't say, do the training board or do the fingerboard too often, because a very novice climber can injure themselves very easy with that. So I'm gonna say movement wise, like I would, I think if I put them through the movement routine that you gave me, just to open up the hips and open up the groin, pretty much the entire hip area, I think
Yeah.
that's gonna be a major factor for a lot of people that I didn't even think would help, or I didn't think of it being as helpful as it's been, just because I was tight, and then now I'm almost doing the splits because of you.
Yeah, I love that. So
So
those
yeah,
are those are yeah, I
yeah,
love those tips.
it would be up and down climb miles on the wall, um, the a lot of core strength and the movement routine, man.
Mm. Yeah, I like that. That makes sense because you have a majority of people when they're coming into climbing. It's it's not a majority of, not to say it's not, but like you have a lot of people that are kind of stagnant most of the day, or they're not as, hyperactive as you or I, and so they are
Mhm.
tighter.
Yeah,
And you can kind of see that when they're climbing. Not to say that, like, yeah, they're missing technique and comfortability on the wall, but they're tight,
which you
like they're
build.
really tight.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and building the technique is it's just gonna come with time. But if you never work on how tight you are, or like if loosening yourself up a little bit, or strengthening yourself to get into certain positions, you're just not going to progress, unless you work on those specific things. You can progress the more you climb, no matter what, but in certain positions, you just will not move unless you work on that.
Yeah. So you talked about failure being kind of helpful, and like how you've kind of failed a lot and going through a lot of these different sports and movements with the
I don't fail, I learn.
scoliosis. Yeah, there it is. With a lot of those learning situations, how have you been able to, because like dealing with that kind of that pushback, right, from the scoliosis, it forces you to be more creative and you have to do a little bit more. But to me, in my mind, seeing it from a first person angle and watching you, it's like you put more work up front, but what you get in the back end is 10 times what other people are doing because you have to be more creative. You have to work harder. What have you learned, kind of having to not necessarily work around your scoliosis, but work with your scoliosis?
There's certain movements that I can't do, like bending. I think it's to my left side, like doing, trunk bends to my left
Mm,
side. I have to be very careful, and I eventually want to get full range of motion for that. It's just I know it's going to take me a lot more time. So I just have to, open myself up in certain positions a lot more often. Dealing with, because I'm just in certain positions, I just can't go. Like my neck, I wouldn't be able to, get my neck to the this side, just because it's not possible unless I cut the muscles off. You know. But so just working on getting those, it's not too many positions, but I know it's a couple, and it kind of interferes with my climbing too. Just because if there's like a specific move that I have to turn a certain way in that specific position, it's just not gonna happen. But I would love to make it happen eventually. It's just gonna take me a lot more time, just because I have to open it up, and it's these are millimeters. That if I work on it, it's gonna help me get that range. But it's just right now it's a big no, It's doesn't mean it's never gonna happen though.
So it's just based off of that, you've almost had to kind of more so learn to work through.
Hmm.
And so, it's not like it's necessarily, I mean, based how you've just described it, it's not holding you back. It's
Yeah,
just you know what you need to do to work through.
yeah,
And so just
simple.
trudging through, you've just kind of learned how to grind.
Pretty much, man. Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to, lifting wise, I can squat fine. Like my mobility's all there. It's just certain positions, man. It's like mainly turning the trunk a certain way. It's kind of hard to explain unless I show, but I'm just kind of like pinched in a spot, and I right now I can't get out of it, or I can't force it just because like it's probably gonna hurt me more than help me. But I know it's gonna be able to open up a little bit more the more I work on it. It's just taking time, you know. It's probably honestly, I don't know if it's bone on bone grinding or anything. I just know I can't move that way, and I'll work on it.
Yeah, I think that's the inspiring part too, which I've noticed. Again, it's like I feel like every time I'm watching you climb, it's in the roof.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I've watched you go through some moves that you looked like you were limited, but to watch you on the wall in the moment think, and it's that the body follows the mind. You just knew how to grind through this moment, and you just had to be more intelligent than this position that it's putting you in.
yeah,
And so I've watched you do some crazy moves where you're doing like a leg lock on your own arm and you're spinning
yeah,
around to get a different angle. It's like it might seem like a crutch to some people, but when I watch you, I'm like, he's 10 times smarter than most people on the wall because he's forced to grind through different moves that they
yeah,
will never be put in.
yeah.
It's I think that's the inspiring part for me.
Appreciate it, bro. Yeah, for certain movements, like I tell a lot of people don't climb the way I do just because I'm limited. Like, I'm much shorter than most people, and in certain positions, I'm just limited. So I have to work around, not every problem is gonna be like this, but for a couple, for a decent amount, I have to work around more than most would have to. So like my beta is gonna be much different than, your beta is gonna be. So like I have to when someone asks me for advice, I have to think tall for a bit. I have to think of how, I would do it if I was, a normal size. But because when they watch me, they're just like, dude, you're just kind of powering through that move. And I'm just like, I kind of have to, and it's not really powering, it's just a completely different move that they think is a lot harder, but it just works better in my position, you know?
Yeah. Like to me, you're the Goggins of climbing. Like
Ugh.
you've been put in hard situations, and it's not an option for you not to like you'll come down, you'll reanalyze, and then you'll try it again, and you'll
Yeah,
try it again, and you'll try it again until you get it. And so I think the inspiring part for me, it's like there's just no is not an option for you. That's why like when I watch you climb, no is not an option. Yeah, like it's harder. Cool.
yeah,
I don't care. Like you're gonna power through it. I think that's
yeah.
the super inspiring part. If you were to kind of like push like a message for people inside and outside of the gym, because I think this is like a really beautiful message in my mind, or just kind of like again watching everything you do. What do you think you would try to portray to people?
It's all possible, man. Like the first thing that comes to mind when you ask me that is just like, I don't know how I'm lifting 5 times my body weight and I'm not snapping every, bone in my body. I I genuinely don't know, but I'm doing it every week, and I get people coming to me saying how much of an inspiration I am, and I'm just like, I appreciate you guys, But it shouldn't be possible, but it is because I make it possible. It's the grind, man. It's you in there every day. Like a lot of people don't know that, or they wouldn't know that I've been doing this for 5, 6 years now, and I've been just lifting in general for 9. So I'm there putting in work. So it's like it's possible when you put in the work.
Goggins of the wall. Look at that. Yeah, I love that message, and I think I think there's a reason why people come up to you without you like it's the whole you don't have to lead from the front, you're leading from the back. And like that's kind of my mantra I like to try to run with. You're not the loudest person in the gym. You're probably the quietest, but what you do is the loudest. And so people
Gotcha.
recognize it and they come to you and go, "Holy shit, like what are you doing? What are you doing?" And like they
Yeah,
are kind of like baffled. They're like, "Dude, like you have this limitation, but you're blowing out everyone in the gym. Like how can I be more like you?" How
yeah,
can I be more like you? How can I do this? How can I do these movements? And so my favorite part is it's like everyone has their own limitations, but it's the biggest limitations in your mind. And if you
it
hold
is,
back
man.
from that and if you make that your huge limiting factor, well, I can't because of this. Yeah, you're going to fail. You're going to fail.
Hmm.
And then you look up at someone like you and you're like, I'm sitting here complaining, but this guy's running through brick walls like it's nothing. Like whatever he's doing is working. And again, back to that. My original thought was like the body follows the mind. Like your mind is stronger than your body, and there's a reason why you can lift 5 times your weight
Yeah,
because you're ready to go.
yeah. It's a great
Yeah.
feeling when people like there's this dude from the gym that I recently, he's been asking me questions on, what I do or what he would recommend to get stronger. And within 2 months, this is an older dude too. I think he just turned 40,
Mm.
41-ish, and he hasn't broken a PR in a decade, he said. And he recently hit over 315. And I think it was like 340-ish, and that's a new PR for him. This is much older than when he used to lift like a maniac. And I feel great just because I gave him some pointers, and he's just like within a month and a half, 2 months, he broke a new PR that he hasn't touched in a decade. And I'm just like, dude, hell yeah, like let's get after it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, the reason why I'm like every time I'm around you, I'm like I do think of David Goggins is because of that. Like your mind is stronger than the weight that you're pushing and pulling. Your mind is stronger than a lot of these roots that are challenging you. Your mind is stronger than these limitations that you have. And so by having people, see what you're doing, they're like, I like it's inspiring enough to where they're like, I can break this PR. And like I think that's
Yeah,
what Goggins has been able to do with his books and his podcasts. It's shown people like he had a horrible life growing up,
yeah,
but that didn't become a limitation. That became like rocket fuel for him to
hmm,
be an absolute tank. And it's like you're doing the same thing. I have this little limitation. It's little and I don't even recognize it. I think that's the
don't
piece
even
because
recognize it.
you could be walking around going, woe is me, that I have this piece that's holding me back and I'm struggling. Or you could be like, I don't even notice it. I don't
Hmm.
even notice it. And it's like, yeah, sometimes I'll be stunted in movement, but I work around it or I push through it. Things change right there.
Yeah,
Right there, it's like within your mind, your body like followed suit. Like, okay, like I'm forced into this range of motion. I guess we're gonna have to learn how to adapt and
yeah,
push into it. And so it's
yeah,
sick to see, other people going like, no, I think I can do it actually.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
I
yeah.
can push this weight.
Fuck yeah. No, I do.
Yeah.
I remember, before I started lifting, because lifting kind of, once I started doing it, it just kind of took over my life. And I'm just like,
Mm.
I don't know where I would be if I wasn't, pushing weight. Because I didn't grow up in a great place either. So it took me in a great place. It took me, brought me where I'm at now, and I'm just gonna get better. But, yeah, I remember in high school before I started lifting, I was just like a scrawny kid. I was like, I had that mentality where I just couldn't do it, and I never want to go back there. Never want to go back there ever. And, it's gonna be hard to get back there when I'm, doing what I'm doing. So I'm just gonna keep grinding, man.
Yeah, you learn how to not just accept the suck, but to kind of almost enjoy the heartache
Yeah,
of certain movements or certain failures, right? Because you're like, it's not failure, it's just learning. Like that is a product of putting yourself in so many of those environments that you're like, I enjoy this because
Hmm.
every time that I fall down, I get back up and I know how to not fall that way, or I at least know how to fall more gracefully. And
Yeah,
so, just by utilizing powerlifting, climbing, and all these other movements, you've just trained your mind to go, yeah, this is hard, but that's life. Like
pretty
that's
much.
what we do. That's yeah, and I'm assuming you've even recognized that without, these sports, like when you get into life situations itself, you probably are more suited for annoying or just shitty situations
Yeah,
overall.
just managing anything. Yeah, that's why I think it just translates so well, the lifting wise or being actively pursuing a goal in the gym can just translate to outside life almost anywhere, man. It's just like it makes you resilient. It
Mm.
uh, makes you be able to take more challenges than, the average person who gets pissed for not having, the right sauce packs in their food when they get home, you know? So I'm just like, you gotta deal with it. You gotta keep going.
Yeah. So then, with that being said, if you have someone that's dealing with a pretty substantial disability, and they're coming up to you asking you for advice, well, you've been able to push through all these things and do such incredible lifts and climbs. What should I do? What would be like your biggest piece to help them out of a rut?
If they're not doing anything, I would just say start, man. Because that's the biggest
Start.
thing. Like, just start. Do something that makes you happy, that makes you work a little harder than what you were doing before. Just do that because, if you have, it's hard when you don't have anything that gives you, that make, if you've never done anything, it's just hard to get somewhere um, when you have nothing of value to look back on that you've done, that you've produced. So like if you just start, you're gonna get little wins, man. You're gonna get little wins, and that's what adds up. It sounds cliche, but it's so true. I mean, I didn't start hitting 315 for 5 years in. I didn't start I didn't start squatting over 2 times my body weight, in the first week or so. Like it takes time. Like I've been doing this for 9 years. It's but I don't regret a single part of it. So just get your foot in the door, start, and second step, don't quit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like almost by going through it, you might not even enjoy it at the start, right? Like something there is to inspire you and to try. It kind of like reminds me of I'm gonna keep going back to this man because I feel like there's so many connections between you and him. But everyone gets inspired by Goggins to go run,
Yeah.
right? And they go run and it sucks.
Hmm.
And so I feel like a majority of them stop because they're like, well, it's fun to listen, right?
Yeah.
It's like the
It's a good
mental
motivator,
masturbation.
pretty
Yeah, you're
much.
like, I love to just like masturbate over this idea of all running's
Yeah.
gonna be sick. And then you get into it and it sucks. And it's like the same as like powerlifting, Olympic lifting. You start going through these movements, you're like, it's cool watching these guys do it. But when I start doing it, I'm feeling like all of my muscles tearing. You're like,
This
"Ugh."
burn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like going through the motions at the beginning and grinding through that first, chunk of time, let that be a few years, like the payout, the back end is going to be ginormous. And I'm
It's
assuming that's
insane.
kind of, yeah, that's kind of what you feel like with all these different sports you've kind of run through.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't even think I told you. I started lifting because I was taking the bus home, and by the time I got out of school and I had to catch the bus, I had to sit in the bus for like an hour and a half because of all the traffic. So I'm just like, I'll go to the
Mm.
gym, which is right next to the bus stop, for 35 minutes to an hour, and by the time I'm done, the bus ride's like 30 minutes. So that's how I started going to the gym. That was like my motivation, just because I didn't want to sit in the bus for too long. Now look where I'm at.
Let's go. So finding a way when you don't have time. I think that's another big excuse that I hear all the
Yeah.
time. is well, I just don't
It's
like
huge.
I
Yeah.
don't really it's just hard to find the time. And it's like, is it hard to find the time or is it hard to find the motivation to utilize that time?
Hmm. Yeah, you can always wake
Yeah.
up an hour earlier. It sucks, but you can do it. Like I just started waking up an hour earlier to get some work on the computer done. Because I would come home from the gym kind of exhausted. I still have to cook, and I just not get as much work done as I wanted. So I'm just waking up an hour earlier. I mean, I go to sleep earlier now. I'm just making more use of, making proper use of my time now. So it was just a me thing. I was staying up later, watching TV. Probably shouldn't be doing anyways. So going to sleep a little better, waking up a little earlier, getting some work done before work starts. And, I feel better about it. It sucked for a little bit just because I'm like, I'm used to going to sleep a little later. But, it is what it is. I'm gonna be happy in a year or two when this work's done and I'm, quitting my 9 to 5 and being able to do what I actually want to do.
Yeah, it's the same grind. It's the same
Same
thing.
thing. Yeah. It applies, man. It
Yeah.
all applies. Like, gym is life.
Yeah, that's beautiful. All right, well, final question before I let you go. And I was kind of sitting on this final question, trying to think of what would be like the perfect final question. And I started laughing and I was like, I think this would be literally verbatim exactly what I need to hear for the final moments of this podcast. What are you getting after tomorrow? What's your Sunday look like? How are you taking your maybe your quote unquote rest day? How are you getting after it tomorrow?
I'm going to the range tomorrow, bro. I'm putting in some
There
work on
it
the
is.
range, man. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna shoot some guns. We're gonna, get better over there. That's another thing. Like, I don't go to the range just to have fun. I'm there, my brothers and I, we go and actually train. Like, we have full on targets. We have a shot timer. We try to get, we record all our times of, how many times can you get 3 shots on this target or whatever. So, like, we go and try to get better every day when we go over there. So, like, it applies, man. Like, I'm trying to get better at the gym. I'm trying to get better in life. Trying to get better at the range. Just trying to get better all around, man.
Mm, beautiful. I love it.
Plus,
Well,
it's fun.
hey, thank you for your time. Where can people, what's your at on Instagram? I feel like that's where you usually post anyways.
Yeah. So, my Instagram is Flinchy23, FLINCHY 23. Uh, You're gonna see me there. I don't really have anything else to for the most part, but yeah, I'm just gonna
So
try to keep growing
Instagram,
that.
that's where they find you.
That's where they find me.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks for chatting. I know we'll definitely jump on another podcast at some point soon.
Yeah, man. I'll have a
But
better setup next time. I'll try to get my PC all set up properly, and then we won't run into any issues or anything. And I'll fix up the lighting and everything.
it'll be good to go. Perfect. It's all about the content, anyways.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. Thank you for your time. I'll talk to you
Have a good
soon.
one, dude. Yeah,
All
let me
right.
know
Peace.
later.